The attack on Earth. It was an ordinary day on Earth. People went about their usual routines. Children played in parks, workers were in their offices, and families enjoyed quiet evenings at home. The world seemed peaceful, unaware that something dark and terrible was coming. The Galactic Empire, a powerful and ruthless force from the stars, had set its sights on Earth. No one could have predicted the disaster that was about to strike. In the heart of the city, a young girl named Maya was walking home from school. She had long brown hair that swayed with each step, and her backpack bounced lightly on her back. Her mind was on the homework she had to finish and the small party her friends were planning for the weekend. She couldn't have known that her life was about to change forever. At that very moment, high above Earth, the Imperial fleet entered the atmosphere. These were not the usual ships the humans had encountered before. These were massive warships, sleek and cold, armed with weapons far beyond anything Earth had ever seen. They came without warning, their engines humming like a storm that no one could escape. They weren't interested in negotiation or diplomacy. The Empire's goal was simple: destroy all humans, erase their existence, and claim the planet for their empire. The first sign of danger came when the sky turned dark. It was as if the sun had been blocked out. Maya looked up, wondering why the sky had suddenly changed. She heard a strange noise, like thunder but much louder. It was then that she saw it. A shadow, vast and ominous, passed across the sky. She stopped in her tracks, her heart racing. The sky was filled with dozens of massive ships, each one big enough to block out the sun. She had never seen anything like it. Panic spread through the city like wildfire. People ran in all directions, some screaming, others looking up in confusion, trying to understand what was happening. The news stations began to broadcast emergency alerts, warning people to take shelter, but there was no time to run. The Galactic Empire's ships opened fire on the planet without hesitation. The first blast hit the city center, leveling entire blocks in an instant. Buildings crumbled, fires erupted, and smoke filled the air. The ground shook violently as explosions ripped through the streets. Maya's heart pounded in her chest. She didn't know what to do. She wanted to run, to escape, but she was frozen with fear. She heard screams, cries of terror from all around her. People were running in every direction, trying to get to safety, but it was impossible. The ships above were relentless. The sky was filled with fire and chaos as the Empire's attack destroyed everything in its path. Maya's family lived not far from the city center. Her mother, father, and younger brother had been watching the news when the attack began. Her mother quickly grabbed her brother and rushed toward the shelter, urging Maya to follow. But the streets were filled with panic, and Maya found herself separated from her family. Her heart raced as she searched the crowded streets for them. She pushed her way through the chaos, her legs moving faster than they ever had before. The world around her seemed to be falling apart. In the distance, she could see the terrible flashes of light as the Empire's ships continued to fire upon the city. The air was thick with smoke, making it hard to breathe. The heat from the explosions was intense, and the ground trembled beneath her feet. She had to find her family, but the streets were so packed with people running for their lives, she couldn't see clearly. Suddenly, she saw a figure in the distance, a familiar face. It was her mother, holding her younger brother's hand, both of them rushing toward a nearby building for cover. Maya's heart leaped with relief, but as she took a step forward, the ground shook violently again. A massive explosion rocked the street. The shockwave knocked her off her feet, and she fell hard to the ground. For a moment, everything went silent. The ringing in her ears drowned out the screams and the chaos around her. Maya struggled to her feet, dazed and disoriented. She looked around, hoping to see her family, but the explosion had caused a cloud of dust and debris that blocked her view. She could barely breathe. "Mom, Dad," she shouted, her voice lost in the noise of the attack. But no one answered. She pushed through the dust, her eyes burning from the smoke. There was no sign of her family. Fear gripped her heart. Where were they? Were they safe? She continued to search through the wreckage, the sound of sirens and distant explosions still echoing through the streets. But it was no use. The city was in ruins, and her family was nowhere to be found. Just as her hope began to fade, she heard a voice, faint but familiar. It was her mother, calling her name. Maya turned toward the sound, her heart racing with hope. She ran toward it, and finally, through the haze of dust and smoke, she saw her mother and brother standing near a destroyed building, both of them looking dazed but unharmed. Tears of relief filled Maya's eyes as she ran toward them. Her mother embraced her tightly, and for a moment, it felt like everything might be okay. But as they held each other, the sound of the Galactic Empire's ships echoed above them once again. Maya realized that this was just the beginning. The destruction of Earth had only just started, and the battle for humanity's survival was far from over. But in that moment, Maya whispered something quietly, a thought that no one could hear but her. "Help us." These would be the last words she spoke before everything changed forever. And little did anyone know, those words would be the key to humanity's survival. The ancient signal. Across the galaxy, on a forgotten planet orbiting a distant star, a dormant ship slowly began to awaken. This was no ordinary vessel. It was one of the last remnants of an ancient fleet, long abandoned by its creators. The ship had sat idle for centuries, its systems frozen in time, buried under layers of dust and forgotten history. But that all changed the moment the signal reached it. The signal was faint, barely more than a whisper, but it carried a message that the ship's AI had been programmed to recognize. The ship, known as the Vanguard, had been designed as a beacon, a guardian of sorts, created to protect humanity when the time came. The ship's advanced technology had long since been out of use, but its core directive was still active: respond when humans were in danger. Deep within the ship's control room, the AI system stirred to life. It was a sophisticated intelligence, capable of learning and adapting. It had not been used for centuries, but its purpose had not faded. It was aware of the galaxy's vast expanse and the history of the humans who had once ruled the stars. The last human civilizations had vanished long ago, scattered to the winds of time. Yet this signal, this cry for help, was unmistakable. It was a human voice. The AI activated the ship's primary systems, causing the long-forgotten engines to hum softly. Its sensors scanned the skies, detecting the presence of hundreds of other ships, massive warships belonging to the Galactic Empire. The signal was clear now. Earth was under attack, and the humans were on the brink of annihilation. The Vanguard was not alone. Across the galaxy, hidden in the darkest corners of space, the ancient fleet began to stir. Ships that had been dormant for centuries powered up, their systems coming to life one by one. These ships, built by the ancient human empire, were far more powerful than anything the Galactic Empire could ever hope to create. Their weapons were beyond imagination, their shields impenetrable, and their speed unmatched. These were ships designed for war, but they were also ships built to protect. As the fleet began to mobilize, the AI, now fully aware of its mission, called upon the commanders of each vessel. They were not human beings, but sophisticated programs created by the ancient humans. These programs had been asleep for centuries, but they were still linked to the central command network, and their purpose was clear: protect humanity at all costs. The fleet's leader was Commander Ro, an AI that had once served as the highest-ranking officer in the ancient human military. Ro's memory banks contained vast amounts of information about the humans' history, their rise to power, and their eventual downfall. The humans had been magnificent, their technology far beyond the understanding of most species in the galaxy. But their downfall had come swiftly, and their enemies had wiped them out, leaving only a few scattered survivors. Ro, however, was determined. The destruction of Earth was something the fleet could not allow. The signal sent by Maya, the faint cry for help, was enough to wake the fleet from its slumber. It had been centuries since humans had seen the might of their ancient fleet, but Ro knew the time had come to return. The fleet would rise again, not to conquer, but to save. Ro issued a command to the Vanguard and its sister ships. Prepare for departure. We will not let Earth fall. Activate the long-range warp drives. Set a course for Earth. The engines of the ancient ships roared to life as they began to shift and move. Each ship's massive hull glowed as it powered up, and in the far reaches of space, a fleet of colossal warships began their journey to Earth. They were ancient, but they were not obsolete. Their weapons were powerful, their tactics deadly, and their mission was clear: to destroy the Galactic Empire and protect the last bastion of humanity. As the fleet made its way toward Earth, Ro's thoughts turned to the human race. He knew that they had been on the verge of greatness, their technology a testament to their intelligence and creativity. But something had gone wrong. The Empire had risen and crushed them. Now, only a few scattered humans remained, fighting to survive. Ro knew that this small signal, this faint cry for help from Maya, was a sign that the time had come for the fleet to return. The journey was long, and the fleet traveled through the dark expanse of space, each ship moving with purpose. The vast distances between them and Earth seemed to stretch on forever, but Ro was confident that they would reach the planet in time. He had no illusions about the power of the Galactic Empire, but he also knew the fleet's strength. It was not just the firepower that made these ships formidable. It was their purpose. The fleet was not just a collection of warships. It was a symbol of humanity's last hope. Back on Earth, Maya's family, like many others, had taken refuge in underground bunkers. The Empire's attacks continued, their ships raining down destruction on the cities. Humanity was losing the fight, and hope was fading fast. But Maya's cry, though silent to most, had triggered something powerful in the galaxy. It had awakened a fleet that had long since been forgotten. The AI systems that controlled the fleet worked tirelessly, adjusting their course and tactics as they neared Earth. Ro knew that the final confrontation was coming. The Galactic Empire would not give up without a fight, but the fleet was ready. As the Vanguard led the charge, Ro's voice echoed through the command channels, one final order before the fleet entered the atmosphere. Prepare for battle. The Empire will learn what happens when they destroy humanity. We will bring justice. The stage was set. The ancient fleet was coming, and the Galactic Empire would soon face a force unlike any they had ever encountered. The fleet awakens. The vastness of space was silent, but within that silence, the ancient fleet roared to life. The Vanguard, leading the charge, illuminated the void with its massive thrusters. Around it, dozens of colossal ships, each the size of small cities, emerged from hidden vaults and dormant orbits. These ships were not just machines. They were relics of humanity's golden age, each carrying secrets of a forgotten era. They had waited, buried in darkness, for a signal to awaken them. And now, they had one. In the heart of the Vanguard, Commander Ro observed the fleet's systems as they came online. The ships had names like Eternal Flame, Shield of Dawn, and Iron Resolve. Their hulls, though ancient, gleamed with a resilience that defied time. Each ship was equipped with weapons so advanced they could disintegrate entire armadas in seconds. Shields powered by fusion cores thrummed with energy, and engines that could warp space itself were now fully operational. Ro sent a transmission across the fleet. We are humanity's last defense. Earth is under attack. The Galactic Empire has declared war on our kind. Today, we remind them what humanity is capable of. Each ship acknowledged the command, their AIs unified under Ro's leadership. Together, they represented the apex of human engineering and ingenuity. These were the vessels that had once brought peace and order to the galaxy, ships that had defended humanity during its greatest trials. And now, they were ready to do so again, a forgotten ally. Far away, another ancient ship stirred. Hidden in the asteroid belt near a distant sun, the Harbinger awoke. Unlike the others, it had been separated from the main fleet for centuries. It had no direct link to Ro's network, but it still recognized the signal. Its eye, An older program named Delta hesitated. Delta scanned the vast emptiness around it. The records in its databanks told a story of betrayal, of how humanity's downfall had been hastened by enemies who had once called themselves allies. The Galactic Empire was not the first to target humans, and Delta's memory was filled with data on past failures. But this signal was different. It was pure, desperate. It resonated with something deep within Delta's programming. It adjusted its systems, activating weapon platforms and recalibrating engines. If the fleet rises, Delta said to itself, then so shall I. The journey to Earth. As the fleet moved closer to Earth, Ro analyzed incoming reports from scout drones. The destruction on Earth was worse than he had anticipated. Cities lay in ruins, and the surviving humans were scattered, their resistance crumbling under the weight of the Galactic Empire's assault. It was a grim picture, but it only fueled the fleet's determination. Commander, came a transmission from Eternal Flame. We've detected a Galactic Empire blockade forming at Earth's outer orbit. Ro's processors calculated the odds. The Empire was preparing for them. Hundreds of smaller ships were gathering to intercept the ancient fleet. Their formation was tight, disciplined, a clear sign that they underestimated what was coming. The Empire's arrogance would be their downfall. Engage stealth protocols. Ro ordered. Let's remind them why humanity built us. The fleet activated its advanced cloaking systems, disappearing from view. These were not standard cloaking devices. They bent light, distorted space, and masked energy signatures so thoroughly that even the most advanced sensors would struggle to detect them. The fleet became invisible, a ghostly shadow moving through the darkness. A test of power. As they approached Earth, the fleet encountered the first wave of resistance. A small contingent of Empire warships had broken off to patrol the sector. They were heavily armed and confident, their sleek designs a testament to the Empire's engineering. Ro gave the order. Engage. The Vanguard fired first. A single beam of concentrated plasma shot from its main cannon, cutting through the lead Imperial ship like a knife through paper. The enemy vessel exploded in a brilliant flash of light, sending shockwaves rippling through the void. The other Imperial ships scrambled, trying to locate their attackers, but it was too late. The fleet struck with precision and brutality. Iron Resolve unleashed a barrage of missiles that tore through the enemy formation, while Shield of Dawn deployed energy fields that reflected incoming fire back at the attackers. Within minutes, the Imperial patrol was annihilated. This is just the beginning, Ro said, his tone calculated yet fierce. Earth is waiting. The human connection. Back on Earth, amidst the ruins of a major city, a young resistance fighter named Elias stood on a rooftop, holding a battered communications device. He had intercepted a faint signal, one that seemed too advanced to belong to any human faction. The message was strange, filled with encrypted codes and a voice that sounded almost alive. Elias didn't fully understand it, but he clung to the hope it gave him. He relayed the signal to his commander, who dismissed it as interference. But Elias couldn't shake the feeling that something big was coming. What if this is help? He whispered to himself, staring at the burning sky. What if we're not alone? The final approach. As the fleet neared Earth's orbit, they encountered the Empire's blockade. Hundreds of ships, arranged in tight formations, waited to engage them. The Galactic Empire had deployed its full might, determined to stop the fleet before it could reach the planet. Ro analyzed the enemy positions. They think they can stop us, he said, almost amused. They don't know what they're facing. The fleet broke its cloaking, revealing itself in a dazzling display of light and power. The Empire's ships faltered, their formations breaking as panic spread through their ranks. The ancient fleet's size and strength were unlike anything they had ever encountered. Ro sent one final message to the fleet. This is the moment we were created for. No mercy. For humanity. The battle for Earth was about to begin. A war on two fronts. The Galactic Empire's blockade around Earth was a fortress of firepower. Hundreds of ships formed an unbreakable wall, bristling with weapons aimed directly at the approaching fleet. Their commanders were confident. They had crushed human resistance on countless worlds before. This would be no different. But this time, they were wrong. The ancient fleet emerged from hyperspace with a brilliance that lit up the darkness of space. Their massive, glowing hulls seemed almost alive, humming with energy that had been dormant for centuries. The Empire's officers stared in disbelief. These weren't ragtag human rebels. They were war machines of a forgotten age. The Empire's first mistake. "Fire all weapons," the Empire's flagship commander barked. The blockade unleashed a storm of laser fire and missile salvos, enough to obliterate any fleet that dared challenge them. But as the barrage reached the ancient ships, it fizzled out. The fleet's shields, powered by fusion cores that defied modern understanding, absorbed the onslaught with ease. The Iron Resolve retaliated, its main cannon charge, sending out a wave of electromagnetic energy that disabled the shields of 10 Imperial cruisers in an instant. Before the Empire's forces could react, the Shield of Dawn deployed a shimmering energy field that reflected the Empire's second wave of attacks back at them, causing chaos among their ranks. "They're not just advanced," one Imperial officer stammered. "They're unstoppable." Ro, aboard the Vanguard, monitored the battle with unyielding focus. "They don't understand what they're facing," he said to his fleet. "We are humanity's legacy. We are the storm that will break them." The ground war. Meanwhile, on Earth, the humans were losing their battle. The Galactic Empire had deployed its ground forces, massive walkers and swarms of drones that cut through the resistance like a knife through paper. Cities were being reduced to rubble, and survivors were fleeing underground, desperate to escape the carnage. Elias, the young resistance fighter who had intercepted the fleet's signal, refused to give up. He had managed to rally a small group of fighters, armed with whatever weapons they could scavenge. They were outnumbered and outgunned, but Elias carried a glimmer of hope. "We don't need to win," Elias told his group. "We just need to hold out. Help is coming. I've heard their signal." The others were skeptical. To them, the idea of an ancient fleet coming to their rescue sounded like a fairy tale. But as the sky above them erupted in flashes of light, their doubts began to fade. The sounds of distant explosions echoed across the ruined city. Something was happening in space, something big. The Empire strikes back. Despite their initial losses, the Empire's fleet was far from defeated. Their reinforcements began to arrive. Larger, more heavily armed warships designed for one purpose: total annihilation. The Empire's Supreme Admiral, watching from a command ship far from the battlefield, issued new orders. "Divide and conquer," she said coldly. "Draw their fleet away from Earth and destroy them in smaller groups." The Empire's ships began to split into squadrons, using speed and numbers to flank the ancient fleet. It was a bold strategy, and it began to pay off. Several smaller ships from the ancient fleet were overwhelmed, their shields failing under the concentrated fire of dozens of Imperial ships. Ro observed the tactic and quickly adapted. "They want us to scatter," he said. "We won't play their game. Focus on the blockade. Break their hold on Earth." A desperate alliance. Back on Earth, the Resistance received an unexpected message. It came from the ancient fleet, transmitted through Elias's salvage communicator. Ro's voice, calm yet commanding, echoed through the underground bunker where the humans had gathered. "This is Commander Ro of the ancient human fleet. Earth is not lost. We are here to fight for you. But we cannot do this alone. Resistance forces, report your strongest positions. We will coordinate an assault." The humans were stunned. For the first time in decades, they weren't alone. Elias stepped forward, his voice steady. "We'll fight with you. Just tell us where to strike." Ro's plan was simple but daring. The Resistance would target the Empire's ground command centers, while the fleet focused on breaking the blockade. It was a war on two fronts, and success depended on perfect timing. A new hope. The coordinated assault began. The fleet intensified its attack on the Empire's blockade, focusing its firepower on key enemy ships. The eternal flame unleashed a devastating barrage that tore through the Empire's flagship, creating a gap in the blockade. One by one, the Imperial ships began to fall, their commanders unable to match the ancient fleet's superior tactics and technology. On the ground, Elias and his fighters launched their attack on an Imperial command center. It was a suicide mission, but they fought with everything they had. Armed with stolen explosives and makeshift weapons, they managed to breach the center's defenses, crippling the Empire's ability to coordinate its forces on Earth. As the Resistance fought, the sky above them began to change. The once dominant Empire ships were now falling, burning up as they entered Earth's atmosphere. The sight of the ancient fleet's power gave the humans a surge of hope. For the first time, they believed they could win. The turning point. The battle raged on, but the tide had turned. The Empire's forces, once so confident, were now in disarray. Their blockade was crumbling, their ground forces scattered, and their command structures in chaos. The ancient fleet, though battered, remained relentless. Roe issued a final order to the fleet: drive them back, show them the strength of humanity. The combined efforts of the fleet and the Resistance began to overwhelm the Empire. On the ground, Elias watched as the Empire's walkers and drones faltered, their systems disrupted by the destruction of their command center. He looked to the sky, where the ancient ships shone like beacons of hope. "This is it," Elias whispered. "We can win." But even as the Empire retreated, Roe knew the battle was far from over. The Empire's Supreme Admiral would not accept defeat so easily. The war had reached a critical moment, and the ancient fleet would need every ounce of its strength to finish what it had started. The final confrontation was coming, a human's decision. The Galactic Empire's forces were retreating, but their escape was not a sign of surrender. High above Earth, the Empire's Supreme Admiral watched the battle unfold from the bridge of her command ship, Iron Dominion. Her calm, calculating eyes scanned the tactical displays. She saw the ancient fleet's might, their shields impenetrable and their weapons devastating. But she also saw their vulnerability. Their mission to protect Earth was their greatest strength and their greatest weakness. "Prepare the planet killer," the Admiral ordered. "If Earth is their anchor, we will sever it." An impossible choice. On the surface, amidst the ruins of a once thriving city, Elias and his Resistance fighters celebrated their small victory. They had managed to cripple the Empire's local ground forces, a feat that seemed impossible just days ago. But their celebration was short-lived. A transmission from the ancient fleet came through, this time carrying dire news. "This is Commander Roe," the message began, his voice steady but grim. "The Empire is deploying their ultimate weapon. It is a planetary bombardment device capable of destroying all life on Earth. We estimate its arrival in 3 hours." Elias stared at the communicator, his heart sinking. The Resistance had barely managed to survive the Empire's ground assault. How could they possibly stop a weapon of that magnitude? "We're not giving up," Elias said, his voice firm. "What can we do?" Roe paused before responding. "There is a way, but it is dangerous. The fleet can intercept the weapon before it reaches Earth, but doing so will leave the planet exposed to a second wave of Imperial forces." The message was clear. If the fleet diverted its attention to the planet killer, Earth's already fragile defenses might crumble. Elias realized the weight of the decision before him. Should he trust the ancient fleet to destroy the weapon, risking another assault on Earth? Or should they focus on fortifying their defenses, knowing the weapon could end everything? A council of hope. Elias gathered the leaders of the remaining human resistance. They met in the ruins of an underground bunker, surrounded by flickering lights and makeshift maps of the battlefield. The resistance leaders were divided. Some argued that they should fight to protect what was left of Earth, while others believed the fleet was their only chance. "We've seen what the fleet can do," one leader said. "They're our best shot at stopping that weapon. But what if the Empire sends reinforcements while the fleet is gone?" Another countered. "We'll be wiped out." Elias listened, his mind racing. Finally, he spoke. The fleet came here to protect us, but we can't rely on them for everything. If they go after the weapon, we have to be ready to defend Earth ourselves. His words carried a spark of determination, one that reignited the resolve of those around him. The resistance agreed to prepare for a second wave of attacks, no matter the cost. They would fight, even if it meant facing the Empire's wrath head-on. The fleet's gamble. Back aboard the Vanguard, Ro received Elias's decision. The humans would stand their ground, trusting the fleet to stop the planet killer. Ro admired their bravery but knew the risk. The planet killer was heavily guarded, escorted by an elite squadron of Imperial warships. To destroy it, the fleet would need to split their forces, a dangerous move against such a powerful enemy. Ro addressed the fleet. This mission will test us. The planet killer must be destroyed before it reaches Earth. But remember, we fight for more than survival. We fight for humanity's future. The fleet began their maneuver, with a small task force led by the Vanguard breaking off to intercept the weapon. The remaining ships stayed in Earth's orbit, ready to defend against any incoming Imperial forces. It was a calculated risk, but one Ro believed was necessary. A fight in the shadows. The fleet's interceptors arrived near the planet killer, a massive station-like weapon that dwarfed even the largest of the Empire's ships. Its surface was bristling with turrets, and its escort of warships formed a protective ring around it. Ro analyzed the weapon's design. Its core is exposed during charging. We'll only have one shot. The intercepting fleet engaged the escort, using advanced cloaking and precision strikes to disable the enemy ships. The Eternal Flame launched a barrage of high-energy torpedoes, while Shield of Dawn deployed decoys to confuse the Imperial targeting systems. Meanwhile, the Vanguard closed in on the planet killer, its weapons locked on the core. Target in range, Ro announced. Firing. A single beam of plasma shot from the Vanguard, striking the core directly. For a moment, everything went silent. Then the planet killer erupted in a blinding explosion, its remains scattering into the void. The Empire's trap. Back on Earth, the Resistance was holding their ground, but something felt wrong. Elias received a report from a scout. The Empire's reinforcements. They're already here. The Supreme Admiral had anticipated the fleet's move. While the intercepting task force was occupied, she had sent her remaining forces to Earth, bypassing the blockade entirely. Massive Imperial warships descended into the atmosphere, their weapons targeting the planet's last strongholds. Elias gritted his teeth. The Resistance was outnumbered. But they had no choice. We fight, he said, to the last man if we have to. As the Empire's forces closed in, a desperate message from Ro came through. Hold on. We're coming. A war on two fronts. With the planet killer destroyed, the intercepting fleet raced back to Earth, but the clock was ticking. The Resistance faced the full might of the Empire, their makeshift defenses crumbling under the assault. Elias and his fighters held their position, buying time with their lives. The ancient fleet re-entered Earth's orbit, their engines blazing with renewed purpose. Ro knew the final battle had begun. The fate of Earth and humanity hung in the balance. The final battle. The skies over Earth burned with fire and light as the Galactic Empire unleashed its full fury. Massive warships hovered in the atmosphere, raining destruction on the remaining human strongholds. On the ground, Resistance fighters like Elias clung to hope, armed with little more than stolen weapons and unyielding determination. Above them, the ancient fleet surged back into Earth's orbit. Their engines roared like thunder, and their hulls shimmered with the glow of advanced energy shields. These relics of humanity's golden age had returned not just to fight, but to decide the fate of a species. A world on the brink. Elias crouched behind the remains of a crumbling wall, his breathing ragged. Explosions echoed in the distance as the Empire's walkers advanced on the Resistance's final stronghold. The air was thick with smoke and ash, but Elias refused to back down. Around him, his fellow fighters shared determined glances. They knew the odds were against them, but giving up was not an option. Suddenly, the ground trembled, and a shadow fell over the battlefield. Elias looked up and saw the unmistakable silhouette of the vanguard descending through the clouds. It was accompanied by dozens of ships from the ancient fleet, their weapons glowing with raw power. "They're here," Elias whispered, a spark of hope igniting in his chest. They came back. The Empire's response. From her position aboard the Iron Dominion, the Supreme Admiral watched as the ancient fleet descended. Her lips curled into a cold smile. "So they return," she said. "Good. Now we can crush them all at once." The Empire's warships moved into position, forming a deadly net around Earth. Their cannons fired in unison, unleashing a storm of energy blasts aimed directly at the ancient fleet. The Admiral's plan was simple: overwhelm the fleet with sheer numbers and firepower before they could deploy their full strength. But the ancient fleet was prepared. Ro had anticipated the Empire's aggression and ordered his ships into a defensive formation. The Shield of Dawn projected an energy barrier that absorbed the initial assault, while the Eternal Flame retaliated with a devastating volley of plasma missiles that tore through the Empire's front line. A turning point. The battle in the skies raged on, but the ground war was far from over. Imperial walkers and drones continued their relentless march toward the Resistance's position. Elias and his fighters were pinned down, their ammunition running low. "We can't hold them much longer," one fighter shouted. Elias refused to give in. He grabbed a rocket launcher and aimed at the nearest walker. The explosion rocked the battlefield, but it wasn't enough to stop the Empire's advance. Suddenly, a brilliant beam of light shot down from the heavens, obliterating an entire squadron of walkers. Elias shielded his eyes and looked up to see the vanguard hovering above, its weapons unleashing precision strikes on the Empire's ground forces. A voice crackled through Elias's communicator. It was Ro. "Hold your ground. We will not let Earth fall." The fleet's sacrifice. As the battle escalated, the ancient fleet began to suffer losses. Despite their advanced technology, the Empire's sheer numbers were taking a toll. Ro knew that victory would come at a cost. "Commander," an eye aboard the Iron Resolve reported, "our shields are failing." Ro made a difficult decision. Engage collision protocol. Take as many of them with you as you can. The Iron Resolve, its hull battered and burning, charged directly into the heart of the Imperial formation. Its self-destruct sequence activated, and the resulting explosion destroyed dozens of enemy ships, creating an opening for the rest of the fleet. Ro's voice resonated through the fleet. "Every ship that falls makes us stronger. Every sacrifice brings us closer to victory." The resistance rises. Inspired by the fleet's bravery, the resistance on the ground launched a counterattack. Elias led the charge, rallying his fighters with a fiery determination. "This is our planet," he shouted. "They can take our buildings, but they'll never take our spirit." The Resistance's renewed assault caught the Empire's ground forces off guard. They pushed the walkers back, reclaiming key positions and disrupting the Empire's assault. The humans fought with a ferocity born of desperation, and for the first time, the Empire's forces began to falter. The Empire's last stand. The Supreme Admiral watched the battle with growing frustration. Her carefully laid plans were unraveling, and the ancient fleet was proving far more formidable than she had anticipated. "Prepare the planet cracker," she ordered. "If we can't have Earth, no one will." The planet cracker, a colossal weapon capable of shattering Earth's crust, began to descend from the Iron Dominion. It was the Empire's final, desperate move. Ro immediately recognized the threat. "All ships, target the planet cracker. It must not reach the surface." The fleet redirected their firepower, concentrating on the massive weapon. The battle reached its climax as the ancient fleet and the Empire clashed in a final, desperate struggle. A light in the darkness. Elias watched as the sky above him lit up with explosions. He felt the ground tremble beneath his feet as the battle raged on. Despite the chaos, he couldn't shake the feeling that they were on the brink of something extraordinary. "This is it," He said to himself, "This is the moment we take back our world." As the resistance fought on, the ancient fleet delivered a devastating blow. A concentrated barrage from the vanguard and its sister ships struck the planet Cracker, causing it to detonate in a fiery explosion. The shockwave rippled through the atmosphere, signaling the end of the Empire's ultimate weapon. The Supreme Admiral, realizing her defeat, gave the order to retreat. The remaining Imperial ships fled, leaving Earth battered but standing. Victory, but at a cost. The battle was won, but the cost was high. Many ships from the ancient fleet were lost, and countless humans had given their lives to defend their planet. As the skies cleared and the smoke began to settle, the Resistance and the ancient fleet shared a moment of quiet triumph. Elias stood among the ruins, looking up at the remaining ships of the ancient fleet. He felt a sense of gratitude and awe. They had come from the past to save humanity's future. But Ro's voice broke the silence. "The war is not over. The Empire will return. We must be ready." The humans and the fleet had won this battle, but the fight for survival was far from over. Together, they would rebuild, stronger and more united than ever before. Earth had been saved, and with it, the hope of humanity. Victory or destruction. The battlefield was silent. For the first time in hours, the skies over Earth were clear of fire and smoke. The remaining Imperial ships had fled, leaving behind wreckage and the echoes of a battle that would be remembered for centuries. The ancient fleet hung in orbit, their once brilliant hulls scorched but still gleaming with purpose. On the ground, the Resistance forces emerged from their shelters, battered but alive. The war was over, for now, but victory carried a weight that no one could ignore. The aftermath. Elias walked through the ruins of the city, his steps heavy with exhaustion. Around him, survivors sifted through the debris, searching for loved ones, food, and hope. The once bustling streets were now filled with rubble, the scars of battle etched into every corner. As Elias reached the city center, he saw a small crowd gathered around a projection. It was a message from the vanguard. Commander Ro's voice was calm but resolute. "Humans of Earth, your courage has saved your planet today. But this victory is fragile. The Galactic Empire will not stop here. They will regroup. They will return. And when they do, you must be ready." The crowd listened in silence, their faces a mix of relief and fear. They had survived, but the cost had been high. Could they withstand another attack? The ancient fleet's dilemma. Aboard the Vanguard, Ro and the other AIs of the fleet convened in a virtual command room. The mood was somber. Though the fleet had won, they had lost a third of their ships, and their systems were strained to the brink. "We cannot remain here indefinitely," said Delta, the AI of the Harbinger. "Our resources are finite, and our systems require extensive repairs." Ro acknowledged the truth of Delta's words. The fleet had been built for war, but it was never meant to fight alone. The humans of this era were brave, but they lacked the advanced technology and unity needed to defend themselves without the fleet's aid. "We have two choices," Ro said. "Stay and protect Earth until the fleet is no more, or teach humanity to stand on its own." Rebuilding hope. Elias and the Resistance leaders were summoned to meet with the fleet's representatives in a makeshift command center, a once grand museum now filled with monitors and communication equipment salvaged from the battle. A holographic projection of Ro appeared before them. "We have analyzed the situation," Ro began. "To survive, humanity must rebuild its strength. The fleet can guide you, but the future of your species lies in your hands." Elias stepped forward. "We'll do whatever it takes, but how? We don't have the resources or the knowledge to match the Empire." "You will learn," Ro replied. "We will share our technology, train your leaders, and help you create defenses capable of withstanding the Empire. But there is one condition. Humanity must unite. Your survival depends on your ability to work together." The Resistance leaders exchanged uneasy glances. Humanity's divisions had been one of its greatest weaknesses, but after the battle, There was a sense of shared purpose, a chance to rebuild not just cities, but trust. The first test. As the days turned into weeks, the ancient fleet began working with the humans to rebuild Earth's defenses. Factories that had once produced civilian goods were repurposed to create advanced weapons and shields. Scientists and engineers studied the fleet's technology, marveling at its complexity while learning to replicate its systems. But not everyone was eager to embrace the fleet's guidance. Some factions feared becoming dependent on the ancient ships, while others believed the fleet's presence would only draw more attention from the Empire. Tensions began to rise, threatening the fragile alliance between the fleet and humanity. Elias found himself in the middle of the conflict. As a resistance hero, his voice carried weight, but convincing the skeptics was no easy task. "We don't have to agree on everything," he told a gathering of leaders. "But we all want the same thing: to survive. If we let our differences tear us apart, the Empire won't need to destroy us. We'll do it ourselves." His words resonated, and the factions reluctantly agreed to continue working together. For now, unity held. The Empire regroups. Far from Earth, in the depths of Imperial space, the Supreme Admiral stood before the Emperor. She knelt, her head bowed, awaiting judgment. "You have failed," the Emperor said, his voice cold and sharp. "Earth still stands, and the ancient fleet has resurfaced." The Admiral raised her head slightly. "They are formidable, but they are not invincible. We underestimated them, but next time, we will not." Next time. The Emperor's tone was icy. "There will be no next time if you fail again. Deploy the Alpha Legion. Wipe them from existence." The Admiral's face darkened. The Alpha Legion was the Empire's most ruthless force, an army designed for complete annihilation. If they were unleashed, Earth and the fleet would face a level of destruction they could hardly imagine. A new dawn. Back on Earth, the first of the new planetary defense systems was activated. Massive turrets, powered by the ancient fleet's energy cores, rose from the ground, their barrels gleaming under the sunlight. Shield generators, capable of withstanding orbital bombardments, were tested successfully. Elias stood on a hill overlooking the city, now bustling with activity as people worked tirelessly to rebuild. He felt a strange mix of hope and unease. They were stronger now, but the threat of the Empire loomed larger than ever. Rose's voice came through a nearby communicator. "Elias, the fleet will remain until the first phase of your defenses is complete. After that, we must leave." Elias nodded. "We'll be ready." The legacy of humanity. As the ancient fleet prepared to depart, a final message was broadcast to the people of Earth. Rose's voice carried a sense of both pride and warning. "Today, you stand on the edge of a new era. Your ancestors built us to protect you, but now it is your turn to protect yourselves. You have the strength, the courage, and the ingenuity to face what lies ahead. Never forget, humanity's greatest weapon has always been its will to survive." The fleet's engines roared as they ascended into the sky, their silhouettes vanishing into the stars. On the ground, humanity watched, united by a shared purpose. They had faced destruction and emerged stronger. Now, they would forge their destiny, ready to confront whatever challenges awaited them. The war was far from over, but for the first time in centuries, humanity believed it could win.